Hey gamers, Brent with ShortPaws.com, and tonight I'm joined by Benjamin Boyce. And Benjamin, we're here to talk, but we're not talking about video games tonight, my friend. We are talking.
What?
Yeah, I know. What's going on?
Ugh, this is strange times we live in.
It's very strange, but we are going to talk about the movie It, which launched last weekend and had just a massive, massive opening weekend. You know, for an
Yeah,
it is the biggest R-rated opening ever. Or I'm sorry, no, it's
it's
right
crazy.
behind Deadpool. I don't think it beat Deadpool.
Okay.
I think it's the second biggest R opening ever, and it is the biggest horror opening ever. I
Yeah.
remember going into going into the launch of the movie. They projected 60 million. They said it was tracking to make 60 million. This thing pulled in 127 million dollars on a 35 million dollar budget.
When was it tracking for 60? It couldn't have been that weekend. The projections had to go up.
No,
Um,
honestly, it was probably about 2 weeks beforehand. It was at 60 because it's an R-rated movie. They didn't think it would attract that many people to it.
yeah. Hmm.
And it just shattered records, man. It went nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a feeling that was going to be the case. It's just everybody was talking about it for whatever reason. This movie just caught on with the mainstream at large, and there was a huge swath of people that wanted to go see this movie when it came out. Hell, I mean, I damn near everybody that I work with was planning to see it that weekend, so I know it was a huge deal for a lot of people.
Oh yeah. So I went and saw it Thursday night, and I know you went and saw it Friday. So we're just going to talk
Hmm.
about it for a little bit here. But just for full disclosure, neither of us have read the book. I'm about maybe a third, maybe closing in on halfway through the audiobook because I don't read. I have to listen to it when I'm at
Hmm.
work. But
Hmm.
for
Understandable.
all intents and purposes, I know neither of us have any connection with the book. I watched the miniseries back in the '90s. It haunted my dreams back in the day. Ben, the movie It that you went and saw last week. This is the first time you've seen or anything to do with Stephen King's It, correct?
Yeah, I don't have any connection to the franchise. I've never seen the original It.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have it on DVD, but I've never watched it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's been sitting in my collection for a while. Never got around to watching it. I too have never read the book about it. Just always heard things about the franchise, about the movie, about the book. So this was my first time where I could actually leap in head first. So
Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, we're just going to talk about. We're not going to spoil too much for you. It's a movie that I recommend highly to go check it out before you watch anything, any spoilers. Just go and check it out. But Mr. Boyce, how about you start steering this ship away from the sewer drain, hopefully.
sure. So just from a general perspective, I like the film.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I usually like these movies that have like kids as the main characters, like kids as the cast. Like I really love Super 8. That's
Yes.
one of my favorite movies,
Mm-hmm.
J.J. Abrams joint. So this movie, even though it's R-rated, it's a little more grisly than Super 8.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that movie deals with some dark things as well. This movie has that kind of feel about it, and it has that kind of heart at the center of it with these kids kind of going through the ordeal that they're going through and trying to figure out what's going on. So I like it from that perspective. I thought the cast they assembled was great
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the kid actors, especially the girl. I don't know her name, forgive me, but thought she was exceptional in her role as Beverly
Mm-hmm.
in the film. Thought she really gave a good performance, especially her like fear scene
Right.
in that movie was pretty intense. Um, so I like it from a global perspective. I will say though there were a couple things that kind of took me off guard. And first of all, is this movie was not as scary as I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Just from a sheer like horror perspective, I don't know that the film succeeded as much on that end as I thought it was going to be. Watching the trailer for this movie, like, I was like, man, this is going to be a terrifying
Right.
experience. But actually going into the movie, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was just because it's just inherently silly some of the stuff that they do, or if it's just I don't know what, for whatever the reason was, it just was not that scary. Like I wasn't like cowering in fear.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I went to see The Strangers in a movie theater, like I wanted to just hide under my chair. Like that's the kind of like fear that film imparted. And I was hoping to get a similar experience with it. And I do have a theory as to why that might be, and I think it might be the trailer. the trailer for this movie is kind of a double-edged sword because in one regard, it's the reason that this movie made the 127 million or whatever that it made. This thing went viral. I mean, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of views it ended up with, but this trailer was a viral phenomenon when this thing came out. And in order for the trailer to be as effective as it was, it hit on a lot of the aspects of the movie that I think were not as impactful had I not seen the trailer firsthand. Like going into the film, like I knew where a lot of like the big moments were going to be because they were in the trailer.
Right.
That's one of the things I hate about trailers, dude. I hate watching trailers. I'll watch trailers for movies that I don't really know a lot about. Like I didn't know a lot about it, so I wanted to kind of get in. I'm like, all right, let me see what this is all about. I was like, oh, okay, man, this looks pretty cool. So I want to go see this. I try to stay away like the Marvel movies. Like I know I'm going to see those, so I try to stay away from the trailers as much as possible.
Right.
But the It trailer, I thought it gave away a lot, dude. There was a lot of the moments in that film that are in that trailer, so that was disappointing for me. But overall, I thought it was a good film, just not as scary as I thought it'd be. Not sure it was as successful from a horror perspective as I was hoping.
Yeah, and I thought some of the scares were pretty good. There were a couple scares that I wasn't anticipating that got me to jump a little bit, but I think they could have gone like a real dark, menacing horror movie if they really wanted to. But I think they focused more on. I think the humor is what kind of took away from the horror, because in a movie like this, you could have easily just been sitting there intense the entire time, not knowing what to expect and on edge. But the dialogue between the kids was just absolutely hilarious. And I think that kind of, that those moments of levity kind of put you at calm a little bit, because I mean, I really do think they could have really went hardcore with the horror on this, but they didn't. But I think that I think it's not as scary simply because there was so much humor to it.
Yeah. I mean, the one kid in particular, I can't think of his name, but the one who was always talking, always like the germaphobe kid or whatever.
Oh, Eddie?
He always,
yeah.
Eddie.
Yeah.
Eddie was, and I think the guy was Ricky, the kid with the glasses.
Richie. That's the kid from Stranger Things. That's Mike from Stranger Things.
Yeah, he was hilarious. He was had a foul mouth, and he was always, he always had hilarious lines in the movie. It seemed. Yeah, so the kids and this may just be my thing. Like I said, I don't have any connection to this franchise, so I don't know the way that this was intended to be perceived. This may have just been an error on my part in terms of what I thought this movie was going to be. But this may have been in line with what Stephen King originally envisioned with his novel. I don't really know. So I don't know if this is the tone that he was going for. But from my perspective, after watching the trailer, the movie I saw was a little bit different than what I was expecting.
And yeah, and the thing is, Ben, the miniseries was not as wasn't an all-out fright fest either. I mean, they tried to build. There was some levity there as well, but it was more provided by Tim Curry's performance as Pennywise, more so than like the guys, the kids or the adult actors. Like more of the humor was provided by Tim Curry's Pennywise, which is. So I mean, it was based on the miniseries and what we saw in this movie. It's not really a die-hard horror movie. I mean, there are some moments of levity, but it's just different from the miniseries because this time around, the kids are providing all the laughs as opposed to Pennywise.
Yeah, even I will say that Pennywise is kind of funny in this movie too.
Yeah,
he's kind of silly. In particular, I'm thinking when he's dancing.
Yes,
he's down in his little lair there.
Yeah,
he's doing his little shimmy or whatever. That was kind of goofy. So he does have some goofiness about him in this film. but yeah, I think it's just more so myself, just a disconnect with the franchise and not really understanding. But I don't know. I really thought after watching that trailer, like that trailer gave off a different vibe than the vibe that's in this movie. So that's where I was kind of taken a little bit off guard. But what about you, Brandon? Like, what's your overall just kind of thoughts on the movie?
I really enjoyed it. I had a blast. I'm actually going to go see it next week with my wife. She was more. My wife was when she saw the trailer, she was expecting more of a horror movie like The Conjuring or Insidious, something that's more tension all the way through. And she doesn't like those kind of movies. Whereas this one, I was like, dude, you're probably going to laugh just as much as you're going to be scared. Probably, if not more laughter than anything. So she's interested to see it. But I thought it was just a really, really good movie. I really enjoyed it. like the way I've described it to my friends who haven't seen it, is like this is like a mixture of Goonies, Stand by Me, and A Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, there are some good scares littered throughout, but it's just overall just a really good story about, children and growing up and everything that entails. And I just thought it was from the kids' perspective, I thought their stories were really, really strong. The performances were strong all around from the kids, so I really like that. And when you create characters that you care about, characters that you fear for, I think that's effective in a movie like this, because obviously Pennywise is such a menacing character. He's dark, he feeds off your fear, and then he eats kids who are scared. So I think by developing the kids and developing their characters and having all the scenes they have together to kind of develop to show that bond between the Losers Club, I thought that went a long ways in this movie. And then I thought Bill Skarsgård was really, really good as Pennywise. We'll talk about that in a minute. But overall, I just thought it was a great flick. I loved the laughs, I loved the scares, and I just really enjoyed my time with this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you feel like the trailer gave too much away about the movie?
Yeah, I mean the big scare, obviously is the one where Beverly's in the bathroom and she turns around and Pennywise is there, and it's funny because I knew it was coming. But my buddy that I went to see it with, he didn't know it was coming, and he jumped, and so it got him. But there were a couple other scenes that I thought were really effective in terms of scares that weren't in the trailer, that didn't involve Pennywise. I thought it was some of the other fears that the kids had, and I won't get into specifics, but I thought some of the fears that the other kids had were actually very effective in terms of like kind of creating like this eerie tension.
Yeah. There were some other moments like you mentioned that were not in the trailer, but some of the main stuff, like you said, Beverly in the bathroom, or like Pennywise in that room of dolls, or him down in the basement in the water with Georgie, like all of that stuff, and even when he like flies at the camera at that moment, like that was in the trailer as well. So it's like some of the most like the biggest, most impactful moments were in the trailer, and we already knew what was happening and what was coming. Because that some of us have seen that trailer like multiple times because it's been everywhere. So,
and I think what they did well in the movie too is, yes, we saw some of the Pennywise scares in the trailer, but there are other evil things in place in this movie. Henry Bowers is a very menacing character. He's a bully. He's a jerk. You saw what we see what he does to Ben on the bridge with the knife. So I mean, you've got that. You've got Beverly's dad is a villain in this movie. A lot of parents are even very, very creepy. Eddie's mom is really creepy. The pharmacist, he's very, very kind of creepy when he has his interaction with Beverly. So I mean, there's more than just Pennywise, and I think, while not as jump scare-ish, I thought a lot of the other evil characters, if you will, I thought they did a good job of creating like kind of more of a creepy tension as opposed to like shock scares. Like they just did a really good job at letting you know that these kids are just in a really bad place, surrounded by evil things, whether they're Pennywise or not.
Yeah, it was more of like an atmosphere kind of thing, as opposed to like a raw like horror aspect to the film. Let me ask you about that too. What do you think about like the way they did the city and the way they did some of these side stories? Well, once again, no connection to the franchise for myself, but I thought Henry's arc was a little strange. He played a certain role up to a point, then he had his encounter with Pennywise, and then his story takes a turn from there, and it gets kind of weird from there. But some of the pacing I felt was kind of weird on that, and some of the other side stories they're hinted at, or some of this creepiness is implied, but it's not necessarily fleshed out or acted upon. What did you think of the way they handled that kind of stuff?
It's funny you mentioned that. Out of all the performance we were talking about, I thought all the kids did well. I didn't really care for Henry Bowers' character, the way he was portrayed on the screen by the actor that played him, and I don't think they really explored him much to kind of figure out his motive. He hates kids. Okay, cool. You're a bully. I guess that was his role. That's all I really got from it. His dad's the sheriff, or his dad's a cop, and all that stuff.
It's clear he has like his dad's not the greatest dude, and he has a terrible relationship with him, and he's a terrible father. But yeah, just his character's so over the top.
Yeah, big time.
It's like it's. I don't want to say like preachy, but it's like it's so like it's so heavy-handed, and extreme, and I don't know what to think of it. It's like, yeah, this is a weird town, but that his whole thing is just it's a little out there.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Yeah, I didn't really care for Henry Bauer's depiction in this movie, and like I said, I didn't really care for the actor. Like you said, there was a couple scenes, with Ben on the bridge, and it just like you said, over the top. Like he was he was in the red the entire movie most of the time, and I thought that was kind of annoying.
Yeah. What about like Beverly's dad or that arc, or like you mentioned some of this stuff with the pharmacist or Eddie's mom? How'd you think about the way they handled that stuff?
I thought they handled Beverly's dad pretty well. I mean, you know what they're implying, what kind of person he is, and I don't think you wanted to explore too much of that. I mean, there's quite a few things in the book that there's just that. Cary Fukunaga, the guy that was supposed to direct it originally. He pulled out of the production because of creative differences, and the rumor has it his script was pretty damn close to getting an NC-17 rating.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, because he wanted to be as true to the.
So he wanted that book's got some messed up stuff.
It does. I haven't gotten to the scene, but like later, or there's a part during the kids section of the book that is very controversial. And obviously, I don't know how much they delve into the book in terms of like her relationship with her dad. But I mean, like I said, I think they did a good enough job. I mean, to imply what type of person Beverly's dad is, and I really thought that the actor that portrayed the dad did a pretty good job at conveying what he's truly all about.
Yeah. I personally, I was kind of happy they strayed away from from the scene that they're talking about in the book. 'Cause like I said, I haven't read the book, but I know I've read about this scene, and it's very strange and graphic, and that probably would not play well in a movie format. So it's better that they strayed away from it. That's one of the things about the film, though, like these side characters, the whole history of the city, the history of Pennywise. I thought all of that stuff was a little underdeveloped in the grand scheme of things. Like I not that they owe us an explanation, but I was like, why is this town so weird? Like, why is everything off? Is there some like is Pennywise just this like over-encompassing like sinister presence that just infects the entire city? Or I don't know if we're just supposed to imply that from the movie, or but this place is so weird and there's so many strange things going on that I wanted to know a little bit more about why. We see Ben in there a little bit going through some of the history of the town, and we get a little bit there, but I wanted more. Like I wanted to know more about Pennywise. I want to know why he's a clown. Is it just because that's scary to kids or what? But like I wanted to know more about him. Like even his whole purpose. I didn't feel that they did an adequate job in the movie of explaining that his whole thing is he needs to scare these kids, and when they're scared, at that point he can then consume them. Like it's like the flavor for his food or whatever. I didn't get that whole vibe, and even at the end there, when he's in his lair and we see some of the stuff that's going on, like I didn't understand really what he was going at. Like I didn't understand why it's hard to talk about this without spoiling this part of the movie. But there's like when you get to the end of the movie, there's some things that kind of culminate, and I'm just wondering like why why this was happening. Did you get that same vibe?
Obviously it's really hard for, and this is like a 1,200, 1,400 page book, and
it's a 1,200 page book.
Yeah, and it's probably and I wouldn't doubt. I wouldn't doubt for a second that we aren't going to hear more about Pennywise's origins in chapter 2 when we get to the adults section of the story. I believe they'll probably delve into that more, why he exists, why he does what he does. Obviously, he takes the shape of a clown because in most cases clowns are funny to kids, and he lures them in with the clown, and then he becomes their fear. And that's when he gets them. So I mean, the clown appearance is because everyone loves clowns. They're funny. They entertain kids and whatnot. And then he lures them in with that, and then he hits them with their fears, what they fear the most, and then he feeds on them. But why he does that, where he comes from, I'm sure will be explained in the next movie. It's a big part of the book, from my understanding, his origins and where he fits into everything. But yeah, I can understand it. Like, if it's your first time seeing this movie, it's your first time with it at all. I can understand why there's a lot of questions, but thankfully that's why there's a whole second half to this story that we haven't seen yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, I understand there's a part two and everything. Just taking this movie as a whole, though, like I want this to be like a self-contained story,
Right.
in and of itself. Like I get that there's other parts of it, but I just felt that for this particular film, there were some areas that were wanting in terms of that area that I personally want to know more about, exactly what was going on, because I was, a little bit confused or disconnected from the whole situation at that point. But well, let's talk about Pennywise, dude. Let's talk about Bill Skarsgård.
Yeah. Well, first I want to get your thoughts on Bill Skarsgård performance. I mean, as Pennywise is the character, obviously you have no reference to Tim Curry's performance in the '90s miniseries or how he's depicted in the book. But what's your take based on this movie alone of Bill Skarsgård's performance as Pennywise?
I thought it was great, man. I mean, he's creepy. He's his Pennywise voice is it's appropriately just kind of frightening, but also funny. It's kind of a strange mixture. When he's talking to Georgie in the sewer there at the beginning of the movie, like he sounds goofy, but he's also scary at the same time. So it's hard to describe in words. You kind of got to see it in action. But he doesn't have a lot of lines in the movie. A lot of it's just kind of looks and different facial expressions and stuff. So I thought he did great in that respect. He obviously the famous scene where the balloons are going up and they show his face, like that's going to be like a iconic moment from the film. So he hits all those kind of beats really, really well. And he also looks like he's really tall. I don't know if he's really tall in real life, but he looks larger than life in the movie. And yeah, like that one scene where he's got the kids in the house and he's like contorting out of
the fridge,
or whatever. Yeah, like that's really cool. So yeah, I thought he did a great job, though. I enjoyed his performance as Pennywise.
And I did too. And the reason I liked his performance as Pennywise is because he didn't try to do what Tim Curry did. Okay, like Tim Curry's performance is still the best part of the miniseries. If you go back and watch the miniseries now, it's really tough to watch. Yeah. Its production values.
It was a made for TV miniseries.
It's a made for TV miniseries, but even in that regard, some of the acting is underwhelming, especially from the adults, which is really shocking. Considering at the time there were a lot of big TV stars in that movie. You had John Ritter, Richard Major, a strong cast of TV actors that were prominent at the time. And watching it then, it's watching it now, it's really tough to watch. The special effects are just abysmal, including the climactic battle at the end of the episode 2. There's just a lot of things that don't hold up well, but Tim Curry's performance still holds up very, very strong. And the thing I liked about Tim Curry's performance is he brought that levity needed by a clown. He brought that amusement, that entertainment. He was bigger than life. I would almost say he was like Jack Nicholson as the Joker. Completely over the top, but contained enough where you're like, okay, he's funny at one scene, but then when he had to be menacing, that's the brilliance of Tim Curry. He could go from funny to menacing and fearful immediately. Like, just the way his performance played out was very, very good. And, going into this movie, first it was Will Poulter, and I was really hoping to see something from him. And then when Cary Fukunaga backed out, they replaced him with Bill Skarsgård. And I'm just really glad Bill Skarsgård went with his own performance of Pennywise. He is much more menacing. I mean, there are some moments of humor in there by him, but he is a much more menacing Pennywise, a much more evil. Like, that evil really comes through with Bill Skarsgård's performance. But I mean, like I said, they're just overall, though, I still think Tim Curry's performance was more effective overall in terms of like the wow factor. Bill Skarsgård was there for the shocks. Like I said, he didn't get a whole lot of lines, where Tim Curry had a lot of lines in the miniseries, and that helped develop Pennywise's character, his personality, make him a little bit more three-dimensional. Bill Skarsgård's performance was more, like you said, yelling and scream, like jump scares and flying across the room and whatnot. So I would like to see them try to tap into Bill Skarsgård's ability in Chapter 2. Maybe give him some more scenes of of dialogue where he's interacting with the adults, much like they did with Tim Curry in the miniseries.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that scene at the beginning of the movie where he's talking to Georgie, and then after that, he doesn't speak much at all.
Mm-mm.
I mean, I can't even think of a sequence where he even has any extended dialogue after that. So it's just like that beginning scene, and then from there, yeah, it's just all his facial expressions and his physical actions from there.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I was interesting in that respect. But yeah, I thought he did great with the material he was given though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and shout out to the costume and the makeup artist, because I mean, I don't know if you've seen a picture of Bill Skarsgård without
Yeah,
everything
I've
on.
seen him. Yeah.
He's a completely different looking person than what you see here,
Yeah.
and it's very much the same with Pennywise from the '90s miniseries. I mean, Tim Curry is. I didn't know that was Tim Curry until like a couple years later. I was like, holy cow, that was Tim Curry. So,
Yeah.
I mean, a shout out to really transforming Bill Skarsgård into this menacing, this evil clown. And, I mean, they nailed that. There's many aspects of the game from a production standpoint that I thought was great. I thought the cinematography was awesome. A lot of the shots over the city. There's that shot where Beverly's, where she's jumping off the cliff into the water. I just thought
Yeah.
the cinematography in this movie was great. You know, Georgie's running down the street. He got the camera overhead. You see the rain falling down on him. It was just very well done in terms of its production values.
Yeah, for sure. As far as like the film as a whole, any particular scenes you wanna touch upon, or anything that stood out to you?
Gosh, I guess that scene in the Barrens where the kids are kind of like making their way in, and Richie and Eddie are going back and forth. I mean, again, it all just comes down to the dialogue between these kids that really establishes that bond that's between them. I thought those scenes were strong. I thought Beverly's scene with their dad was very effective. I'm trying to think of some of the other scenes. I thought the library scene was pretty creepy, especially down in the basement of the library. There's a scene with Ben that's very disturbing. But overall, I just thought it was there was a lot of good scenes throughout. It's really hard to just pick one or two. But what about you?
Yeah, I thought the most effective scene overall was probably Beverly's scene in the bathroom.
Yes.
Thought that whole sequence was obviously very creepy, and thought that was well acted, well shot from a directing perspective. Like you mentioned, the scenes with the kids, Eddie, Richie, like those guys stole the show every time they were on the screen. And it's that's what I love about those movies like Super 8. It's like the kids, they've got these great dialogue scenes, and it's just kind of drives the movie home, and that's the same thing for it here. Like every time those guys were on the screen, they just they had a really good rapport and had some really strong scenes there. Now, I need to ask you about the end of this movie too. So if you have not seen it, stop watching or stop listening to our discussion here. But so at the end of the movie, so we're in Pennywise's lair. The kids are down there. They're down there to save Beverly, and then we finally figure out what Georgie's getting at when he says you'll float too. So all the kids are floating around around this obelisk or something in the middle of the room. So that's the part I didn't understand, and that's where I was confused about what Pennywise was trying to do. So it's like we talked about earlier. It's like, yeah, he's trying to scare the kids and then eat them, but all the kids are floating around this obelisk, right, like in the middle of his lair. So is he trying to eat them? Is he saving them for something? Like, what exactly is going on at this point? Did I miss something, or is this just not explained?
I just don't think it's explained very well. Like I said, I'm not that far into the book, so I'm not really sure what if that scene's even in the book. I have to believe it is, because from my understanding, is it Andy Muschietti? I think it's Andy Muschietti. Did a fantastic job at translating a lot of stuff to the book, even for modern '80s as opposed to the '50s or '60s, whatever it took place in the book. But no, I'm not really sure what that was all about. I'm not really sure why the kids were floating there. I mean, there were bodies all throughout that, all down in the Barrens, and like in that like you said, like this thing they were just circling. So I'm not really sure what the point of that was. But again, these are things that I have to believe will be explained. In the sequel, we'll get an understanding of Pennywise's origins and what his intent is every 27 years. Why does this take place every 27 years? And what is he? Why are they floating? I mean, these are all things that we need answers to.
Yeah, and that could very well be the case. But once again, with myself having no connection to this franchise,
Right.
I didn't even realize there was a chapter 2. So I'm going into this movie. I'm
Mhm.
thinking like this is the movie. Like there's gonna be a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Mm.
So as we finish the film, then I'm like, what the hell's going on here?
Mhm.
So the movie finishes, and then at the end they tell you like, yeah, there's gonna be a chapter 2.
Mhm.
So it's like that's great. But I gotta imagine a lot of people are in the same boat. Like they're gonna go into this movie like thinking this is the movie.
Mhm.
Like this movie is not billed as it, the first chapter. It's
Mhm.
it. So
Right.
a lot of people are gonna go in like thinking this movie is the movie, and they're probably gonna get to that part too and be like, I don't really understand what's going on here.
Mhm.
And then the movie ends, and then you find out there's a chapter 2. So yeah, I hope some of that stuff is addressed, because yeah, that just didn't jive with what the movie was trying to tell us. And there were times when I thought the kids were scared, but then Pennywise didn't act on his feeding or whatever. So I
Mhm.
don't know if they have to be scared to a certain level. But there's just a lot of questions I have about Pennywise, and
Mhm.
about how he operates, or what his mechanics are. So
Right.
that weren't answered in the movie. And then at the end, he kind of slides down into that pit. I don't really know if that was a drain or something, or what happened there. His
Mhm.
head's like opening up at
Yeah.
that point, doing something weird. I'm just like,
Mhm.
at that whole like ending sequence, I'm just like, what in the hell is going on here? I just left with a lot of questions there.
Mhm.
So yeah, I want some answers in terms of that. And if it's in chapter 2, that's great. But I wanted it in this movie too.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, it's while we might not understand fully what's going on, like I said, I don't know how accurate the miniseries was to the book, but it's just these are things that we hope we hear about more in chapter 2. And anybody that's read the book knows that there is a whole bunch to this movie, or a whole bunch more they have to explore. And so obviously the people that read the books know, the people that saw the miniseries know that there's going to be another thing. But like you said, there's folks like yourself that have no connection to either one of those things, and you go into a movie and you're like, okay, why are these people floating here, and why is this movie over? So
Yeah. So there was no floating kids in the miniseries.
I don't remember seeing floating kids, but it's been a long time since I've watched that. Like I said, every time I watch it, but actually, I'm not gonna lie, I tried watching it probably about a month and a half ago, and I had to
Yeah.
shut it off. I'm like, man, this movie sucks. It's like, I can't watch this miniseries. It's like I said, it did not age well, and the only reason I would tune in is just to see Tim Curry. And
Yeah.
even after a while, you're just like, okay, I'm sorry, Tim. I know your performance is strong throughout, but you were failed miserably by everybody else.
Do you think he was thinking that as he was making this movie? Like, man, I'm really driving this thing here.
And I don't think it's just him. I mean, even the director, the guy that directed the miniseries, came out and said afterwards, goes, yeah, we did a piss poor job of representing the book and the source material. We did a really bad job at it.
Yeah. Yeah, just thinking about some of the things I've heard that are in this book, and then I obviously seeing the movie here, it's like, how was this ever fit into a made-for-TV movie in any kind of effective fashion? So I guess that's the highest praise you can give to Tim Curry, is the fact that he carried that performance, in that setting.
Right.
So shouts out to Tim Curry, man. I went to see the movie with my wife, and she's I think she's seen the original, but she was like, we should go back and watch the original. I was like, well,
Nah,
well, maybe-
don't do that to
maybe-
yourself.
maybe I'll give it an attempt to see.
The miniseries is literally like 4 hours long. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's
Is
two.
it?
It's like an hour and a half or 2 hours for the kids, and it's like 2 hours for the adults. And I'm serious, man. The special effects at the end of the second episode with Pennywise in his true form or whatever, it's so bad. It is really, really hard to watch. And you can actually see it in John Ritter's face and the other actors' faces. They're just like, man, this really sucks. Like, man, this looks really bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So so I think overall I enjoyed the movie, man. Like I said, it was a bit of a shock for me, though. It was much different than I expected it to be. And that's not necessarily a knock on the film. That's not to say I didn't enjoy the movie, but I have questions. There are things I want answers to that I didn't get answers to, that I'll be eagerly anticipating in chapter 2. But overall, it was a fun flick, and that's where I'm kind of conflicted on, because I don't know that I was going into this wanting a fun flick. But when I left The Strangers, I was like, man, that was a fun movie. I was like, an hour and a half of like sheer terror. But yeah, It for what it is, I think, is a fun movie.
Mhm.
And even though it deals with some crazy stuff and some dark stuff, the kids, like you said, bring that levity to it. And it does, if you go into it anticipating something more, like you said, like the Goonies or like Super 8, like something along that vibe,
Mhm.
then I think you'll enjoy yourself. So I liked it, and I'll be eagerly anticipating Chapter 2 because I want some of these answers, man.
Mhm.
I guess that's the highest praise I can give to it. The
Yeah,
fact
you
that
want more
I
of it.
want to know.
Yeah, you
I
want
want
more.
to know what's going on with this, and I want to know like what's going on with this world.
Right.
You know, if the movie sucked or if I didn't care about it, like, man, I don't give a damn about Pennywise or where he came from.
Right.
But yeah, I want to know like where the actual clown came from as well. Like, is this a circus act from the past or something?
Well,
I want answers, Brent.
well, hopefully. Well, hey, get the audiobook. It's only 44 hours long.
No, is that it?
Yeah, you just listen 8 hours a day.
Wow.
That's 5 days. That's a work week, dude.
Is this seriously 44 hours?
It's 44 hours, dude. Done by Steven Weber, though. It's a very, very good job. He's a
Wow.
great reader. So, but no, and the thing that I like about the kids in this one being kind of a fun film, like you said, I think this is going to pay off in the long haul because the characters are the kids are so lovable. They're so good. They've established these characters. They've established their relationships, and I think that's going to add some weight to when they become adults. When I'm sure that Chapter 2 with adults is going to be a much more mature, probably a much darker film. And I think by having those strong performances from those kids, that those bonds explored, it's going to make you care about the adult actors even more when you get to these scenes. You know the story behind them that creates that depth to those characters. So I actually believe that the adult actors, whoever they do hire, are going to have big shoes to fill because they have to maintain those relationships. Even though in the book, everyone kind of goes their own separate ways as they grow up. But, you know, the actors are still going to have to portray that, hey, look, we used to be a really cool, close squad, and I hope they're able to, create that chemistry again.
Yeah. And obviously going through a traumatic event like that's like a bonding experience that you kind of hold on to for life.
Right.
So regardless of if they've gone their separate ways or not, going through something like that with Pennywise, that's something that you don't forget. And those are kind of lifelong bonds that are established at that point. So, yeah. Even if they haven't seen each other for years or however this plays out, like they should still be connected once we see them in the sequel.
Absolutely. So, boys, any final thoughts on It, man, or you think that's about it? I think we covered it.
No, yeah, I think we hit on all the beats you wanted to hit on, man.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fun movie. It's a movie we're seeing. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and check it out, and I'll be anticipating where we go from here.
Absolutely. We want to get your thoughts on the movie It. If you've got answers for us, if you can tell Boyce why the hell those people were floating around, what the hell was that word you used?
Obelisk. I don't know if that's what it was, but
wow,
it's like
I feel like you're offending me by saying that word because I don't know what it means. But yeah,
it's basically like a tower or
just say tower. Just say tower and trash. That's what it was. Look at tower and trash.
Tower.
There you go. Trash. Yeah. See, now everyone knows what you're talking
trash
about.
Tower.
But if you got answers for us, if you got any theories about what that represents, if it's even in the book, I don't know. I haven't gotten to it yet, but we want to get your thoughts, your overall thoughts on it. What'd you think of Bill Skarsgård's performance as Pennywise, and how would you compare it to Tim Curry's performance? What'd you like about the movie? What didn't you like about it? Sound off in the comments below. Let us know. We want to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed this conversation, give it a like. If you didn't like it and you want to give it a thumbs down, that's fine. Just explain to us why you didn't like it, and we'll be happy to try to improve on the next one when Chapter 2 comes out.
If you wanna hear more stuff like this, like if you wanna hear us do these kind of offshoot movie discussions or things like this in the future, if you enjoy this kind of stuff, let us know, and we'll keep that in mind as we move forward here.
Absolutely. So for Mr. Boyce, I'm Brent Felsing. Make sure you visit the website, www.shortpause.com. Follow us on Twitter @TheShortPause. You can see our Twitter handles right underneath our names there. Give us a follow. Give us a shout-out. Talk to us on Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. And also, check out the Short Pause Gaming Podcast. Yes, we're talking about movies here, but we run a gaming website, and we have a podcast that goes up every single week. Short Pause Gaming Podcast, available on iTunes, TuneIn, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and right here on YouTube. So for Mr. Boyce, thanks again for watching. Have a great night.
See you guys.